The lawyers have a plan, the court has a timeline, the market has a price, and you are standing in the kitchen wondering how you are supposed to pack up an entire life into boxes. This is what is actually happening inside you. Welcome to Real Estate on the Couch. Today in the Real Estate Psychology Lab, we look at 10 psychological reasons why selling your home during divorce feels so impossibly hard. Let us begin. 1. You are not just selling a house. You are closing a chapter of your life. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross spent her career studying how human beings process loss. One of the most important things she discovered is that we grieve anticipated losses with the same emotional intensity as real ones. Before a single buyer walks through your door, your mind is already processing the grief of something you have not yet lost. It sounds like this. I know I have to sell. I know it is the right thing. But every time I walk through these rooms, I feel like I am erasing everything that happened here. That feeling is not weakness. That is not you being dramatic or irrational. That is grief doing exactly what grief is designed to do, honoring what mattered before letting it go. The pattern. You are grieving a loss that has not happened yet, and that grief is making every practical decision feel like a betrayal. The small win. Before the next showing, walk through one room alone. Name out loud one memory that happened there. Not to hold on, to honor it, then let the showing happen. You are not erasing the memory. You are separating the memory from the walls. Two very different conversations are happening. One about a property that needs to be sold. One about a chapter of your life that deserves to be honored before it closes. Only one allows you to move forward with peace. 2. Two people, two different timelines. Judith Wallerstein of Stanford University spent 25 years studying what actually happens to people after divorce. One of her most important findings was this. The two people ending a marriage are rarely in the same emotional place at the same time. One partner begins detaching emotionally months or even years before the separation becomes official. By the time the real estate negotiation begins, they have already grieved, already processed, already begun imagining a different life. The other partner may still be in the early stages of shock. It sounds like this. I do not understand how they can talk about selling as if it is just a transaction. Like, none of this matters. Like our whole life together meant nothing. What looks like coldness is seldom indifference. It is someone who started grieving much earlier than you did. The pattern. You are not in the same emotional place. You are not supposed to be. And that mismatch is making every conversation about the house feel like a personal attack. The small win. Before the next negotiation conversation, ask yourself one question. How long have they had to process this compared to me? That single question will not eliminate the pain, but it will make the conversation slightly less personal. And slightly less personal is enough to make a decision. Two very different conversations are happening. One about a partner who seems ready to move on. One about two people who are in very different places on the same painful road. Only one explains what is actually happening. 3. Selling feels like admitting it is really over. Psychologists who study loss and transition consistently observe that human beings use physical objects and spaces to postpone emotional acceptance. As long as the house exists, as long as you both still own something together, some part of the mind holds on to the possibility that things could still change. It sounds like this. I know it is over. I have accepted that. But selling the house makes it feel final in a way that nothing else has, like closing the last door. I am not ready to close it. That is not denial. That is the psyche doing what it has always done, using the concrete world to manage what the emotional world cannot yet fully accept. The pattern. The house has become the last symbol of a life that still feels real to you. Selling it feels like destroying the evidence that it ever happened. The small win. Write down 3 things that will still be true about your life after the house is sold. 3 things that the sale cannot take. Your memories, your children, who you became inside that marriage, those who travel with you. The walls do not. 2 very different conversations are happening. One about a transaction that needs to happen. One about an ending the heart has not yet fully caught up with. Only one moves forward. 4. The fear is not about the past. It is about the future. Mavis Hetherington of the University of Virginia spent 30 years studying families after divorce. One of her most consistent findings was that the fear of the future paralyzes practical decisions far more than grief about the past. It is not what was lost that stops people. It is what is unknown that stops them. It sounds like this: I do not know what my life looks like after this. I do not know where I am going to live. I do not know if I can afford to start over. And as long as the house is still there, I do not have to know yet. Hetherington's research also showed something important. The people who make clear decisions early in the process, even imperfect ones, rebuild their lives significantly faster than those who stay frozen waiting for certainty that never comes. The pattern. The house is not protecting you from the future. It is delaying your arrival in it. And every day of delay costs you something the market does not refund. The small win. Make one decision this week about your next chapter. Not about the house, about you. Where do you want to live? What kind of space do you need? What does the next version of your life actually require? One answer, one direction. That is enough to start moving. 2 very different conversations are happening. One about staying in the familiar because the unknown feels impossible. One about what becomes possible when you stop letting fear make your decisions. Only one is actually about your future. 5. The neighbors already know. Paul Bohannon identified 6 distinct stations of divorce. One of the most underestimated is what he called the community divorce. The moment the for sale sign goes up in front of the family home, the private decision becomes public. The neighbors see it. The school community sees it. The people who watched you build that life together see it. It sounds like this: I am not ready for everyone to know. Every time I see a neighbor, I feel like they are looking at me differently. Like the sign in front of my house is telling a story I have not finished processing yet. That feeling is not vanity. That is a completely understandable response to one of the most vulnerable moments a person can experience in public. The pattern. The for sale sign feels like a public announcement of your most private pain. And the loss of control over your own story is a grief of its own. The small win. Decide in advance what you will say when a neighbor asks. One sentence. Something true but brief. You do not owe anyone the full story. Having that sentence ready means you are not caught off guard. And not being caught off guard feels like control when everything else feels out of control. 2 very different conversations are happening. One about a property that is now on the market. One about a private life that just became visible to everyone. Only one can be managed at the pace the market requires. 6. Everything you spent together feels like it has to be accounted for. Richard Thaler's Nobel Prize-winning research on the sunk cost fallacy shows that past investments, financial and emotional, create a powerful psychological pull that distorts present decision-making. Every renovation, every improvement, every dollar spent, every hour invested, every dream that went into making that house a home was real. And it mattered. It sounds like this: we put so much into this house. So much money. So much time. So much of ourselves. How do I just sell it like it was nothing? But the past investment, no matter how significant, cannot determine the future decision. What you spent together belongs to the chapter that is closing. What you decide now belongs to the one who is beginning. The pattern. You are trying to honor the past by holding on to the present. But honoring the past does not require staying stuck in it. The small win. Write down the number, the actual financial return you will receive from the sale, not what you spent, what you will receive. That number belongs to your future. Let the past be honored in memory. Let the future be built with what comes next. 2 very different conversations are happening. One about honoring everything that was poured into that home. One about making the best decision for the life that comes next. Only one is actually useful now. 7. The future you planned died too. Psychologist Pauline Boss introduced the concept of ambiguous loss, the grief that comes not from what was, but from what was supposed to be. The retirement you planned together, the holidays that were going to happen in this house, the grandchildren who were going to visit, the version of the future that lived in these rooms and never arrived. It sounds like this. It is not even the good times I keep thinking about. It is the things we never got to do, the plans we made that are never going to happen now. That is what I cannot stop grieving. That is not confusion. That is one of the most painful and least acknowledged forms of grief that exists. You are not mourning a memory. You are mourning a future that felt completely real until the moment it was not. The pattern. The house holds not just what happened inside it. It holds everything you believed was still coming. And selling it means closing the door on a future that never got the chance to exist. The small win. Write down one thing you had planned for this house that will never happen now. Just one. Name it specifically. Give it a moment of acknowledgement. That future deserved to be grieved. And grief that is named loses some of its power over the decisions that still need to be made. Two very different conversations are happening. One about selling a property, one about saying goodbye to a future that lived only in your imagination but felt completely real. Only one honors what that future actually meant. The psychic divorce is the one that hurts the most. Anthropologist Paul Bohannon identified 6 distinct stations of divorce: legal, economic, co-parental, community, psychic, and emotional. Most people get stuck on the legal and the economic. But Bohannon found that the one that takes the longest and the one that almost nobody names is the psychic divorce. The separation of the identity that was built inside the marriage. The reclaiming of a self that existed before and will exist after. It sounds like this. This is where I became who I am. Everything I built as a partner, as a parent, as a person, happened inside these walls. I do not know who I am somewhere else. Bohannon's research showed that the psychic divorce, the full reclaiming of individual identity, cannot begin in earnest until the shared physical space is released. As long as both people still share the house, the psychic divorce remains incomplete. The pattern. The house is not just a property, it is the last shared station, and you cannot fully begin the most important part of your recovery until it is released. The small win. Ask yourself one question. Who was I before this house? Name 3 things about that person. Those things did not live in the house, they lived in you. And they are waiting. 2 very different conversations are happening. One about leaving a home. One about beginning the most important and most liberating station of the entire process. Only one set you free. 9. Guilt gives away too much. Anger fights for too little. Robert Emery of the University of Virginia has spent his career studying how people make decisions during divorce. One of his most consistent findings is that guilt and anger are the 2 emotions that most reliably distort practical decision-making. Guilt makes people concede too quickly. Anger makes people fight for symbolic victories that cost more than they are worth. It sounds like this: I just want it to be over. I will agree to whatever they want if it means I never have to have this conversation again. Or, I do not care about the money. I just refuse to let them win. Neither of those is a real estate decision. Both of them are emotional states when making financial choices. The pattern. Guilt and anger are not negotiating strategies. They are wounds making decisions. And wounds make expensive choices. The small win. Before any negotiation conversation, ask yourself one question. What decision will I be able to live with in 5 years? Not today, in 5 years. That question alone will save you from at least one decision you would regret. 2 very different conversations are happening. One driven by guilt or anger that needs to end the pain as fast as possible. One about making decisions you will be able to live with for the next 20 years. Only one serves your future self. 10. Avoidance does not make it smaller. It makes it heavier. Constance Ahrens of the University of Southern California spent decades studying how families navigate the divorce process. One of her most important findings was that emotional avoidance around shared practical decisions, especially the sale of the family home, is one of the factors that most consistently prolongs the process and increases its cost. It sounds like this: I know I have to deal with this. I know I cannot keep putting it off. But every time I think about it, I feel so overwhelmed that I just cannot. That response is completely understandable. The situation is genuinely overwhelming. But Ahrens' research showed consistently that delay does not reduce the weight of the decision. It adds to it. The pattern. Every day of avoidance feels like protection, but it is not protection. It is interest, and it compounds. The small win. Make one phone call this week, not to decide everything. To begin, call your attorney, call your agent, call a financial advisor. One call, one conversation. That is not a commitment to the outcome. That is a commitment to yourself that you will not let fear make this harder than it already is. Two very different conversations are happening. One about waiting until it feels less painful to move forward. One about understanding that moving forward is what makes it feel less painful. Only one actually works.
If any of this felt familiar, you are not alone. If you found this helpful, give it a like. It helps more people find us. Subscribe so you never miss an episode. This is Real Estate on the Couch.